Before we start the show, I'd like to ask you to spend 7 minutes of your time to fill up our podcast listener survey. This would really help me in getting to know you, our audience, a little bit more, and also continue to deliver content that is value adding. You'll find the link to the survey in the podcast's description on all podcast platforms, on YouTube, and also on my website. Thank you so much.
Being a founder, you're waking up every day, the world is punching you in the face over and over and over again. And what do you have the ability to do? You only have the ability to react to the situation, right? So you have to punch back, and that is very uncomfortable. People are going to throw bombs at you, and you're going to have investors or board members yelling at you, and you're going to have crazy market conditions. But again, what you have in control is not the situation, but how you respond to the situation, and the situations are going to be uncomfortable, right?
And that's the norm.
And that's the norm. That is your day to day. You are going to live there. That's why I said get comfortable being uncomfortable, because this is the world that you chose to live in, right?
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 53 of Conversations with Lulu. My guest is Kareem Elsirafy. He is the managing partner at Modus Capital. It's a venture builder with offices in Cairo, in Abu Dhabi, and soon in Riyadh. They have a $50 million fund that invests in and supports entrepreneurs. Kareem's personal story is a lesson in resilience and compassion. He went on from living in a homeless shelter to become a successful serial entrepreneur, having raised north of $200 million and co-founded Unite Us, a company valued at over $1.5 billion. I will be talking to Kareem about building startups from the ground up. I will be talking to him about some of the lessons that he's learned throughout his journey and what makes great entrepreneurs. We're also going to be talking about the venture building model in detail. So let's tune in. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you, Kareem.
Pleasure.
It's always great to meet somebody who is building great things, but also has an amazing personal story as well. So typically I want to stay away from personal stories, but when you and I spoke, I thought we should definitely talk about that. We're definitely going to be talking about Modus Capital, right? And how to build startups from the ground up, and how do you make it work as a venture builder. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to start by talking about resilience, right? And what does it mean to be a great entrepreneur? Mm-hmm. So you've had hardships in your life.
A few.
Yes. And you went from homeless at some point in your life
yep.
to co-founder of $1 billion company.
Correct.
An overnight success, I'm sure.
Over 10 years. It's a long night.
So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you've been through extreme hardship, right? Yep. And it didn't break you for some reason. Why is that?
Look, I think it's all about perspective. You can't control the environment around you, but you can control how to respond to something. And very, very early on, I realized that if I wasn't going to take control of my life and my situation and understand that I have the ability to respond irrespective of the circumstances around me, and that is what is within my control, then I was just going to be, flowing in the wind, and it's going to pull me right, it's going to pull me left, which it still happens, right? Nobody's 100% bulletproof, right? Mm-hmm. Even bulletproof vests have, they break down at some point. But I think that mentality is really, I think it's really important, right? And it's something that you have to think about, your brain is your biggest strength, or it can be your biggest weakness. And it's all about how you control it and how you manage it.
And how did you get to that realization?
So that was pounded into me by my drill instructors in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So when I was in the Marine Corps, they literally would make you understand that your brain would fail long before your body. And that if you have that mental strength and that mental toughness, your body can do amazing things, right? And this is where it's the starting point and it's the ending point. And I've seen this, right? I've seen men who are, and it's always the biggest, scariest guys, super, super big muscles, 6'3", 6'4", and you see these guys break down, right? And you can clearly see that it's mental. I remember we were doing like a 60-mile, we were doing a 60-mile hump with our packs. It's like about 100, 120 pounds. And this is in June in South Carolina and on Parris Island. And I've seen somebody like pass out because they didn't have like the mental strength to like just continue forging on. But his legs were like still walking. It's kind of weird
Really?
to see. Yeah.
So it's not only so. Is it like the movies? By the way, do you have a bell?
No, that's like probably like Navy SEAL training, right? Yeah, that's reality for Navy SEAL training. Yes, there's a bell where you like ding and tap out. But no,
Okay. So that's not Marines. Okay.
No, when you sign up for the like the Marines, or that's like specialized school, right? That's after you're like in the Navy, and it's like an advanced advanced training, right? And it's very extremely high selective, extremely rigorous, like you see in the movies. But no, you sign a contract with the U.S. government, you have no option, right? And when you get to boot camp, by the way, it's like in the Marines in Parris Island, they make Marines in two places in the world, okay? On Parris Island in South Carolina and in San Diego. And the ones that they make in San Diego, we call them like Hollywood Marines because, they're near an airport and they can see people. But in Parris Island, you're literally on an island that's surrounded by swamp, right? It's an old airplane base. And the only humans you can see are the people on base. And there's a bridge in the far distance that you can see the light. And they tell you the fastest way off this island is to finish your training. And you have people say, oh, like I'm hearing voices and this and that. And what they do, they put them in like the chow hall to like work as a cook for like 9 months while they get processed out, So when if you just do your training, it's going to be 3 months. So no, when you sign the contract, like you're signing a contract and like they own you for 4 years, there's no getting out of it.
Interesting. So why would you decide to do that? It's the most grueling program out there, and why would you want to do that?
So let me set the context. So first, it was in April 2001, so before 9/11. The United States hadn't been in a conflict since the first war in Iraq, which was very, very brief. And coming from Middle Eastern family, like you're either a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or a failure, right? There's really no other option, right? So in that, I thought to myself, okay, I think I was smart in high school, but I wasn't very studious. I was like an athlete, and academics always came second. And I thought to myself, if I go to college, I'm probably just going to continue like on this path and go through this typical probably like party in college or whatever. And I said, okay, let me go do something that will give me discipline. And I've always been like a get your hands dirty, like really roughing it kind of guy, And my older sister actually was in the Navy. She's 1 year older than me, and she joined the Navy because it provided stability. And she was living with my mom. My parents were split at the time. And still are. So it provided stability, and it also gave her kind of like a sense of belonging. And in addition to that, it would pay for her education afterwards, because that education in the United States is not cheap. It's extremely, extremely expensive. So I kind of went through this same thought process, but I was like, okay, if she's in the Navy, I'm like, I definitely got to one-up my sister, and who's like the baddest of the bad, like Army is land, Air Force is air, Navy is sea, and Marines is all three, So I was like, all right, let's just sign up for the Marines and just be a hard charger. And
Okay, so your sister was your first role model.
She was, yes, she was. Although I didn't get to spend a lot of time with her in my teen years, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but let's talk a little bit about role models, right? Because I think it's important. So the Marine Corps, they were a kind of a role model that shaped you, right? In a way, how you think, how you became mentally tough. Mm-hmm. So it's as mental as it is physical, basically.
Correct. I mean, because people come from all walks of life, right? And let me tell you, there's no room for egos there. They bring you in, and your drill instructors, they break everybody down to zero. Level playing field, and then they build everybody up the same way. Because when you're talking about people's lives, right? Like, let's get serious about this for a minute. It's the Marine next to you to your right and left, and you have to think about the required discipline. If I'm on fire watch and my two other Marine buddies are sleeping and it's their time, and I doze off, and Charlie comes in and, you know, gives us a nice smile ear to ear with a knife, that's you know, people's lives are at stake here. So there's no room for that discipline to fail or for that discipline to break down, because you are part of a team and you're only as strong as your weakest link, and people depend on you for their lives. So it's not a joke. You know, it's not a joke. So this discipline and this mental toughness to be able to get through and fight and soldier on and just be a ruthless warrior, like they build everybody up the same exact way. And that's why they say once a Marine, always a Marine. Like you can never take it out of you, ever.
I think we got to that by speaking about mentors, by the way.
Yeah.
So I had asked you about mentors, I think, and we kind of went on a small tangent.
Sorry.
But the role of mentors, right? Because the Marine as a body was a mentor for you.
Absolutely.
And then you had another mentor, because I saw on your website, on Modus VC website, that there was a very important figure in your life, and you wrote a great blog post that I encourage everyone to read. It's called "Find Your Larry." So what is the role of mentors, Kareem? Like how, I mean, clearly this gentleman really shaped you and helped you. So how important is it for entrepreneurs, for people to have these mentors?
Look, I think it's critical, and I think surrounding yourself with the right mentors, it can just be one, or it can be, multiple mentors that all have a unique value added that they support you. Some give you tough love, some give you soft love and encouraging words, some have like other types of specialties and different ways to support, but it's absolutely critical, because if you think about it as an entrepreneur or even as just an individual, right? Like think about a jar, right? Like you are inside the jar and the jar is your life. Can you read the label? Like you can't read the label because it's on the outside of the jar. And having a mentor is somebody who is on the outside, who understands who is inside the jar, but also can see the bigger picture. And this perspective is absolutely crucial. And this is whether it's an advisor for your startup or whether it's a mentor for you personally. This is really a key thing that they're able to bring to the table. And they do it obviously from extensive experience. You layer that in, so they may have more life experience, more experience in the industry, et cetera. So these are all the additional value added, but really the core of it is that perspective that you're not able to see because you're too close to it.
So what did Larry give you? Why was he so critical in your life?
Larry, coming from a broken household, it does something to you. The feeling of value, self-worth, self-value, it really gets shaken. And I mean, at least for me, and that's compounded with the fact that I'm Egyptian American, but in the U.S. people always saw me as Egyptian. And in Egypt, people always saw me as American, because I would just go there during the summer. So I'm like, okay, like where are my people here? Like where do I fit? And that was very tough for me. And what Larry really did is he really kind of illuminated that my story is what makes me who I am and what makes me unique. And that is something that is incredibly valuable, right? So in the article, I mentioned about when he told me to apply to Columbia University. And I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, my grade in French over the course of 2 years in high school combined was not a passing grade. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get into an Ivy League school. And he was like, listen, your story is unique. You have a unique journey, and they look for people of different backgrounds and diversity. And this is something that they want to contribute to the student body. And they're not going to find anybody like you. And I was reluctant, and I said, okay. And lo and behold, it was exactly like he said. Again, perspective, right? I'm inside the jar. What I see is somebody who wasn't very studious when in high school, didn't get good grades, at the time I was like 26 and I'm applying to college, and so I'm like, okay, Ivy League school, like no way, like less than 2% acceptance rate, for people who are just traditionally coming out of high school. And then as a transfer student, it's even lower, right? So I was like, there's no way. But again, that perspective, he was right. He could see something that I couldn't see.
So you need these mentors to help you, as you said, see things that you can't see yourself and guide you and kind of nudge you slowly so that you get there yourself eventually.
Absolutely. They help you come to the realizations that are very challenging for you to do on your own, even if you have the highest level of self-awareness. You know, it's still, you know, you still can't read the label from the outside, from the inside.
I've heard it as well. I had one of my guests on the show. I can't remember who to attribute it to, but they told me it's kind of like holding a mirror. Like they help you hold the mirror so that you can really see yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is important. Yeah. So then you went and then you did Colombia and then you went on to become an entrepreneur and then you founded a great company in the US, and then let's fast track a little bit to when you came here to the region.
Yep.
And you're doing a relatively new model here in the region, which is called the venture builder. So maybe tell us a little bit, like tell the audience a little bit about the differences between venture builders and like typical accelerators and incubators, and what do you do exactly in the venture builder? Sure.
So I'll start with kind of what was my perspective when I came to the region. As an entrepreneur, and you know this because you're an entrepreneur, it's you look at a market, right? And you say, okay, where are there gaps or where can value be created to enhance something? And you develop a solution to this problem to create value added, right? And I just took this same exact approach, but instead of looking at an industry in a specific country, I looked at an ecosystem, right, in a specific region. And that's the innovation ecosystem in the Middle East. And what I realized is that there's tons of great talent, right? There's lots of basic 101 problems that you can solve that can be valuable companies, but there are skills gaps, and this is inherent in an emerging innovation ecosystem. It's still very nascent. You know, how many people have gone from idea to exit? You know, not a ton, and it will take time for that to develop.
Yes.
So the venture building model is one where you operationally support entrepreneurs with more than just capital. So, you know, you always hear, smart capital, value added capital. This is like, venture building is like super smart operational capital. So back to your question, you know, incubators focus on the very, very early stage, right?
So the ideation phase.
Exactly. Ideation, get a certain level of validation so that you can go begin building a prototype or an MVP, right? And then accelerators, you know, they vary, but, you know, they're essentially there to help you get organized and help you structure yourself so that you're ready to grow. But most of the time, these programs are, one, they're very short, right? You're talking about 3 months maximum. I think it's like the longest program. Two, they're a one-size-fits-all model, right? So there's no real customization for each company, and every company and every founding team has different construction and different needs. And the last thing is the amount of resources that that an incubator and accelerator provides. You know, some workshops, office hours, but you know, you're talking about a team of what, 3, 5, 7 people, and they usually support cohorts of 10 to 15 companies. You know, so if you were putting your kid in school, you know, one of the things that you look at is what's the teacher to student ratio. That is very, very important, you know, because you want your child to get a higher level of attention, and the bigger the class body is, the less time that they are going to get from teachers. So it's essentially the same thing. So what venture building does is it provides support on the, you know, the longer spectrum of a startup's life cycle. So at Modus,
early? Do you start like really early?
Can be as early as an idea stage. And that's the great thing, because if you're talking about, you cover idea stage, you know, let's say validation, you know, getting product market fit, and then beginning to scale up. Companies can come at any one of those points. So if you're anywhere along that life cycle, you can come into a venture builder if they have the right model and they support this, and essentially leverage just the expertise that you need for the phase that you're at. So one is, again, the scope of the life cycle that it covers. Can start at idea, can go all the way to they're in the market, you know, they've been active in the market. We had a company with our venture builder at Hub 71, a company that had been in the market for 4 years and was generating like millions in revenue and, you know, significant customers. But the company, if you look at the product, it was like a Frankenstein, right? It had all these nuts and bolts of features, and what they really needed was to take a fresh perspective, look at the product, slim it down to the feature sets that were the most valuable to the biggest audience, and then put together a proper product roadmap. So they're not just like building features and throwing them against the wall and not taking an analytical approach to looking at the data and making data-driven decisions, right? So this is a company that came into our venture builder, for example, and this is a company again again 4 year mature company.
Okay. So how long do these companies stay with you? Because you said the accelerator is one of the longest, is probably around 3 months.
Correct.
So how long do companies stay with Modus?
The minimum is about 9 months,
Okay.
but it can go up to 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So it depends on, it depends on the founder. It depends on, it depends on the position that they're in and the traction that they're able to get. So let's say at a minimum 9 months, okay, company went out, they got a couple of pilots, they began getting users. Are they well positioned to be able to fundraise? Are they an attractive investment opportunity for, call it, a late seed or a Series A round, institutional investors, or high net worths, but sophisticated ones, not just your angels. And sometimes they may want to go farther. They may say, no, something, we want to progress a little bit farther in order for us to have a much better position, because it'll help them with the value of their company, right? The company will be worth more the more progress it has. So this is really, really up to the founder.
But is there, so how big is your team, Kareem? So, because you said, again, accelerators, they have smaller teams, you have a bigger team. So how big is the team, and how?
So each venture building team is about 35 to 40 people.
Okay.
And there's 4 squads, okay? There's business and strategy, product and design, tech, and marketing and growth, which allows you to go through an entire product iteration cycle. And again, what we do, which is the second point about incubators and accelerators and how they're differentiated from venture builders, is the scope is totally custom. So for example, if a founding team are a couple of techies and they've built this MVP, but they don't know business, they don't know product, and I'm sure you know what it's like when you have a developer build a product without a product manager or a designer, right? What they need is they need product, they need marketing, and they need business, right? But if somebody comes in and he's just a business-oriented person and they understand this from a business perspective, but they don't know tech, they don't know product. So what you do is we look at it like, imagine if we do a full scope, like we're a full-service digital agency that can fill in the skills gaps or the operational gaps that you need. And the scope is totally custom for them. And that's why the equity that we take is totally custom for each company, because it depends on man hours that is covered by our investors' capital, right? That runs at cost. And we take equity for that and we share it with our LPs.
Okay, so there's no standard similar to the accelerator model where you would invest, let's say, I don't know, $100,000, $120,000 against 6% or 7% or something like that.
No, I mean, we have a cap for our investment fees. We have a cap of how much we'll put into every company, right? But some companies require less, right? Because they're more mature. Some companies require more. We've gone like about $150,000 over the allocated budget for some companies. But yeah, that's the only thing. But cash in relation to equity, no, because every company is at a totally different phase,
Okay, and this is not cash to the founders, like here's $150,000, go build your company. This is man hours.
It's a combination of cash and man hours, right?
Okay.
But the cash is tightly controlled. So for example, it's okay, here are the man hours for us to build the product, but you need, let's say you
cash
need
for marketing, for example.
Marketing, fully covered, right? Business development, that's covered. If you have a license or you want to go to a conference or something, again, that's business development, that's included. That comes out as cash. But
okay. So the money is with you, basically.
Correct. The money is with us, and then we provide it to the founder when they need it for these things.
So so they have a credit line, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And so so you said one of the advantages of this region is that we have a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. But one of the gaps that you're trying to fill is that we don't have the expertise, right? And you're right, not many founders have gone through exits or big exits. Mm-hmm. So where do you bring your team from?
So the talent that's very well developed here is predominantly creative talent and technical talent,
yes.
right? And then obviously you need localized business, essentially like business strategists who understand the way business and structure works in Saudi or the UAE or Egypt. Mm-hmm. But if you talk about like growth hackers, right? If you talk about product managers. Data scientists. There are some very good data scientists here, but think about 2 things. Think about an expertise as a framework and an expertise on execution, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where it really differs. So for example, in our model, the marketers have to be local. So somebody who's going to be being a marketing manager, let's say for Egypt, they have to understand consumers, demographics, attributes. They need to know that, right? So they have to be local. But what we can do is we can bring a growth hacker who worked for venture builders in LA, and he can come or she can come and they can provide these frameworks for them to follow and help guide them and help show them that, okay, these are the frameworks and this is the construct in which you will operate, right? This is the SOP. And because that's really what it's about. It's about execute this way, look at the data. After you get the data, you understand it, analyze it the right way, and then again, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So that's an example. That's an example. And if I can link it all to one thing, it's really about data, right? Think about how many product managers here make data-driven decisions. Think about marketers, right? Marketing is, if I were to tell you omni-channel digital growth, right? People here, I think a lot of people here would not understand what that means, right? How do you leverage social, PPC, retargeting, SEO, SEM, email nurture campaigns? How do you use all of these holistically to understand somebody's digital journey through a conversion funnel and set this up in a way where if you're going to put $1 of ad spend in, you have the maximum ROI on that ad spend, And this is all really comes down to like data. Same thing with product. Oh, if we build it, they will come, or excuse my language, throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. That's not a really good strategy. It's not, it's not, for us.
It's not a good strategy when you have limited funds and resources.
Exactly. You need to be surgically efficient because this is inherently risky, right? And you are already going to test. So what we do in a venture builder is we bring people who have been there and done that, right? And what they do is they help founders avoid first-timer mistakes because they've been there.
And what is their motivation to do that? Because there's a thing that like really great talent, they want to be building things, and when they build things, they get attached to the products that they're building.
Of course.
And then they'd want to maybe stick around with that company. So it's what you have is almost like an agency model in a way, right? Where you have great talent building projects, but then they need to like
hand them off.
Yeah, exactly.
So every single teammate at Modus gets equity in the companies that they build.
Okay.
Right? So we are like an institutional co-founder with entrepreneurs. And these are our differentiator as a venture builder is human capital. $1 is $1 is $1,
exactly.
Right? But what we bring to the table are the people. And what is a company? A company is a group of people working together towards the same goal. It's all about people. People are the real value creators here.
Towards the same goal. I think that's very important.
Of course. Our goal is to create a SaaS product that helps, give people easier access to social services. That's the goal. Our goal is to be impactful and create something that helps with this connectivity. And everybody is aligned. And this is and founders, they have to have this vision, and this vision needs to be implemented into the team, right? And into the company culture. So people are the most important asset of any company. So you have to understand that, and you have to create a company culture that follows that coincides with that. For example, for us, people get unlimited paid time off. They get a professional development budget every year. They get equity in all the startups that they build. They get extended remote work, and they get bonuses. So we've created this culture of everybody needs to depend on one another, and as long as everybody carries their weight, the whole thing works. And at the same time, everybody is incentivized in the right way. I don't care if you want to go work from the south of France for 2 months in the summer. In this day and age, just bring your laptop and work. And I don't care if you want to take 2 months off a year or 3 months off a year. If you're getting your work done and you're getting it done on time, you've earned it. You've absolutely earned it. So understanding that you hire an employee and a person, a human being walks in, if you do not have this perspective on your people and your teammates, then respectfully, I think you're missing the ball. I think you're missing the ball.
Yeah. So, but does that disadvantage founders in any way when the time comes for them to leave the venture builder and go on their own? You've hooked them on the drug, right? You're giving them all the goodies. They have access to great talent that probably they couldn't have afforded, right? If they were a startup building it on their own. You've given them all that support. You've been their Larry, basically.
Yeah.
And then they have to step out on their own in the world. So does that disadvantage them in any way?
Not necessarily, because you have to think about, the following, okay? Our success as a venture builder is how well do companies do overall. And if we are venture building a company with a founder and that company is unable to raise funds, which allows them to hire their internal team, then that is a reflection on us, right? And how well we did as their operational co-founder. The other thing is that we don't just say, okay, hey, you're done with the program.
See you later.
See you later. Good luck, right? Which, by the way, is what VCs do. Here's money, and I'm going to give you, 1 or 2 hours a month of advisory, and good luck. That doesn't work for us. So what we do is we say, okay, we have a team that helps do technical sourcing and technical vetting of talent. Okay, and we present these people to the founder. So for example, if let's say we were building all of the tech and the product because the founder was a business person, right? We will tell them, okay, what you need in order to replace the Modus team, you don't need 35 people. Because remember, 35, 40 people, they're working on 2 or 3 ventures at a time, right? So there's fractional time allocation to each venture. What you need is 3 developers, 2 marketers, and one product manager. So we do this. This is part of the venture building. Okay, what's your expense? What are your expenses going to look like? What's your budget? Your hiring plan, et cetera. And we bring them this talent that's vetted from a technical perspective. It is not for us to make the cultural decision on whether or not this person is good or not. They ask us for advice all the time, and we gladly give it. But this is the founder's company, and it's their culture that they're going to be building, right? But what we do is we give them vetted talent, right? And our ethos is really helping us attract, this people-centric, kind of approach. It's really helping us attract some of the best talent. So this is something that we provide to the founders, and then these people come in. By the way, we also have people who want to go, and that, yes, they get very attached to a company, and they're like, can I go be the product manager for this portfolio company? By all means.
Because I would see that happening, right? Because there's more to it than just delivering on a job or a task, right? I think there's personal relationships that can grow. There's chemistry. Having been a founder myself, I know that sometimes you have a couple of people that really have your back, or that you can trust and fully, or sometimes you'd want these people obviously to come along with you.
Yeah, you've been in the trenches, like going to war with your comrades.
Exactly.
Sometimes they want to. Sometimes they want to be there. Absolutely. The only thing that and it's in our best interest, because we want those founders to have the best talent anyway. And we're giving them the best Modus experienced talent. It's totally fine. But what we say is we just look at our pipeline of talent. We say, okay, we have to have a transition plan. We need 2 months or 3 months for us to bring somebody in and then acclimate them, and then begin doing a handoff, and then go and be part of that company. And vice versa, right? Companies that build great talent, you go and you work at a startup for 4 years, and you say, something, I've been doing the same thing at the same startup for 4 years. I want something a little bit different. They can go and they can start looking on LinkedIn and leveraging their network, or they can come back to Modus and maybe work for the venture builder, or maybe look at what other portfolio companies we have that are hiring, right? So it kind of creates this little ecosystem, where if you come in, you have a lot of optionality as far as what you can do.
Yeah, because I think that's probably one of the things that you might need to address when startups graduate and they are pitching to institutional investors, and these investors are going to come and say, okay, who's your team, right? And so I think that having that ability to either retain some of the great talent that they worked with, or hire some amazing talent, I think is very important.
Yeah, it's critical. And you also when you asked earlier, does this put the founders at a disadvantage? Actually, I think it's the opposite. What we do is we take our these standard operating procedures and we implement them in the company, right?
Yeah.
So by the time they're going and raising money, it's a well-oiled machine. They've gone through they've gone through 5, 8, 10 sprints, product iteration cycles and product sprints, so they've got this embedded.
So they won't have to make the mistakes on their own, right? So they've learned from your mistakes, basically.
Correct.
And then whatever you've learned, you're kind of helping them implement.
Exactly. And this is, so now, here you have an end result, which is a company that was very well built, right? Minimal technical debt. Like how many companies you see go raise like $5-10 million Series A round, and like 30% of that they have to rebuild their tech because they have like 80% technical debt.
Yes.
That doesn't happen, you know? You don't have that. So the caliber and the quality of the companies that come out of a good venture builder is it's very, very high. And this is the goal, right? We should be producing companies that are, people should be waiting in line to see what is the next company, a la Y Combinator, the next company that's going to come out, so I can jump on this investment. And this is really what we're seeking to build.
So for the investors that are coming in, it's a company that's been de-risked. There's a product market fit. There's a good technically sound product, right? That's being built. There's the know-how. There's the growth hacking, marketing. Everything's kind of set up and ready.
The operations is set up, it's running smooth, there's significantly lower risk than a traditional startup, and you have a founder or a founding team that has effectively done an MBA in company building, you know?
That's great. So who's your typical founder? What do you look for in founders?
Great question. So if you think of us as bringing like the 70-80% tech startup building playbook, doesn't matter whether you're fintech or SaaS or whatever it is, building a tech startup, there's a lot of similarities, right? Like 70-80% of it is the same. What we look for is we look for founders that have a very, very deep understanding in an industry. They bring that remaining 20-30%. I worked at a bank, you know, for 15 years, and I understand that there is a challenge that customers have, right? Consumers have, and it's 1, 2, 3. And I have an idea for a solution to be able to fix this, right? But I've never built a company before. I've worked a corporate job most of my life. You want me to be an entrepreneur and jump off the cliff and build my parachute on the way down? Like very unstable, very scary. You know, I've never built a team. I've never fundraised. So we provide a very
soft landing,
a safety net, right? A safety net, right? And what are founders' big challenges, right? Hiring people. Most founders spend most of their time hiring people and raising money. You know what I mean? If you eliminate these two from the equation in the hardest time, which is going from 0 to 1, you know, then you've done them quite a big favor.
Okay, so they have to be subject matter experts because the rest of it, basically, you can take care of.
Correct.
Right?
We're not experts in every industry, you know. So that's not our place.
But you're the expert in company building.
We're the experts in company
So
building.
they have to be industry, subject matter experts.
Subject matter experts. The other things are like soft skills, right? So they have the ability, and man, we put them through the ringer. So like our venture builder, we accept less than 1% of applicants.
Do you have like a mini Marines program in Modus?
No, it's not. It's not that.
Do they have to make their bed in a certain way?
No. Go home and check. Oh, you're off by 2 inches. No. So we want to see if, like, you know, we challenge them, right? We say, okay, like, why this? Or here, go do this task. Like, we see if they have the ability to take constructive criticism, right? We have the ability to see if they're going to think creatively, right? Or are they going to be so pigeonholed and narrow-minded that they're going to drive this to death? You know what I mean? Even if all of the data and the whole world is screaming, this is not the right fit. You know, as founders, it's important to have a certain level of focus, but too much, you know, to the extent that you're oblivious to the data that's around you and what the market is saying, that's the other end of the extreme, and that can kill a company, right? You just keep trying to stick a square peg into a round hole, and it's just not meant to fit, you know? So this is one of the things we test.
So you do that before accepting them?
During the application process.
Okay.
And the other thing that we look for, do they have the ability to attract and retain the best talent? And this is personality, culture, you know. For example, we've seen founders that are the type that, they're proud of the fact that they have some developers, and they're like, I tell the developers, you're not going home, and I lock them in the office for 3 days until they deliver the product. And we're just like, yeah, he thinks that, I know how to work my team, and I'm gonna, you know, whip my team and to get the maximum value for my investors, you know what I mean? But life is about a balance. Like that's an extreme, you know. You're not going to be able to retain talent if you don't have a good culture, you know, and you're not able to do that. So this is probably the second most important thing, if not the first most important thing. Do they have the ability to create a culture and attract and retain talent? Everything else can be taught, right? But being super like narrow-minded, not taking constructive criticism, not being open-minded. It's also trainable, but it's significantly harder because this is something that's like innate within a person's personality. Same thing on the culture. Culture is a reflection of the leadership's personality, you know? So.
But how do you test these soft skills? Because it's, you know, you're probably screening a lot of people, you're looking at a lot of applicants, and people are probably on their best behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's like in a relationship when you meet somebody, like they're all great and they get you flowers, and then all of a sudden things change, right?
Yeah.
So how do you? It's so difficult. Like things like culture fit.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about culture fit, but how do you like measure culture fit, right?
So we do like psychographic tests, right? On founders.
So you do these things. Okay.
We do, but that's, you know, that provides one perspective. But everything is great when you're in the honeymoon phase, right? But what we do is we push buttons, you know, like we push back against the founders, and we do it not in like a mean, aggressive way, but we're saying like, hey, like we don't believe that this data is accurate. Like, tell us how you got it. Like, go back and do this. We give them tasks, like as part of the application process. Go and prepare this, right? And what you'll find is a lot of them are just like, oh, this is too much work. And these are people, that's the first filter one,
yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then it gets more and more refined, and people really hang in there. And when you put pressure and you put them in a challenging situation, you get to see their response and how they'll react. Some people blow their top, you know what I mean? Very quickly. Some people don't. Some people are the most pacifistic, like calm ever, you know what I mean? So this is how we do it. And the other thing, which is like any investor, it's your gut feeling.
Gut feel, I was gonna say.
The person that's sitting across from you, like you either know or you don't know.
Yeah.
And this you get wrong too, but if you're doing kind of a combination of these things, you know, you're getting multiple data points, it helps you make a better educated decision.
Yeah, I think gut feel is really, really important.
Yeah.
For sure. So, okay, so they have to be subject matter experts. They have to be able to take constructive criticism, not super narrow-minded, right? And able to build culture around them and able to attract a great team.
Yep.
Build a team.
Yep.
Okay, simple.
Easier said than done.
I know, of course.
But they're out there, and we see a lot of them, and it's really incredible. We tell them, by the way, like, you better get comfortable being uncomfortable, because this is an uncomfortable journey, right? Like, being a founder, you're waking up every day, the world is punching you in the face over and over and over again, and what do you have the ability to do? You only have the ability to react to the situation, right? So you have to punch back, you know? And that is very uncomfortable. You know, people are going to throw bombs at you, and you know, you're going to have, you know, investors or board members yelling at you, and you're going to have crazy market conditions. But again, like, what you have in control is not the situation, but how you respond to the situation, you know? And the situations are going to be uncomfortable, right?
And that's the norm.
And that's the norm. That is your day to day. You are going to live there. That's why I said get comfortable being uncomfortable, because this is the world that you chose to live in, right?
Yeah.
And this is what comes with it, right?
Yeah. Can we tell that, like, I wrote this post on LinkedIn the other day about, like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you really have to be all in.
Yeah.
And I got so much pushback on it. You know, basically, what about work-life balance? What about if it's a woman and she's pregnant? Like, I got all of these type of outlier like cases. You know, but basically whatever it is to try to say, no, this is a toxic mentality. Like, we shouldn't expect entrepreneurs to be all in. I was all in, you know, when I was founding my company. I mean, how else can you build a company?
Yeah, look, you said it. They're outliers, right? And even if, like, I agree with you, and I respectfully, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but I respectfully disagree with that. Like, you are in the hardest asset class where you have to work the hardest to build value. You have to build something of value. Yeah. And if it isn't hard, it's not worth doing, right? Like, I'm telling you, building a company is hard. Building a company that builds companies is even harder. People call me like a masochist. Why do you like to torture yourself, you know? But it's worth doing. It's really worth doing. And yes, you absolutely have to be all in, because you're going to wake up every single day and the world is going to punch you in the face, right? You go through cycles. Things are good, but most of the time things are going to be shitty, you know, and things are going to suck, and you're going to have to figure things out, right? but I agree, like you have to be resilient. You have to be ruthlessly dedicated to what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, and you can sense that. You can sense that when a founder speaks, right?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they speak about it and maybe they're like soft spoken, but you feel the energy. And we talked about this earlier, that gut feeling, you know what I mean?
And I think, look, I mean, there's something important as well when when you are investing as well. So we're aligned on the founder thing, but also as an investor, your ultimate goal, right, as an investor is to make a return, right?
Correct.
Whether it's an impact or financial, but there's like a return, and mostly financial, right? Because people give you money because they want like a financial return, unless it's an impact fund or something like that. So you need to make bets, right? And you need to bet on who you feel the people that are put in the most work, right?
Yeah.
Or again, now people are gonna come and say, well, you know, it's the quality of the work, and like if someone does 12 hours but they're not very good and they can do 6 hours, like of course there's all these scenarios, right? But basically just to be all in, it's very hard.
Yeah, and look, you owe it to your investors, right? Your investors are not giving you money so you can just nonchalantly like give it a try.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like wing it. Like don't do them a disservice. Like, you know, that's investors are responsible for other people's money. As a fund manager, you have a fiduciary duty to properly manage money, you know, for your investors, you know. And so you need to find the founders that are like that. Like you want founders that'll, you know, I don't want to say kill themselves, like literally, you know what I mean? Like God forbid, but like you want founders that are again, like that are ruthlessly loyal to the cause and the mission and will not sell out, you know what I mean? And they will maintain the integrity of what they're trying to do, you know, and they will be all in. Like these are all things that you have to have because that's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
Exactly.
It's very, very simple. That's what it takes. If it's not there, then, and it happens that it happens with people, but it's a combination of like timing or luck, but that's the long shot, right?
Or you can have a lifestyle business, right? I mean, you can have a nice business that you know, employs maybe 10, 20, 30 people even, and you can have a nice business, but
sell products on Amazon.
This is not the venture capital, basically, startup, tech startup model.
And this is why the best founders are founders who have gone through a pain themselves and they understand it and they lived it, because when they talk about it, you see it come out. I built my last startup because of my challenges transitioning out of the military. It was so painful. And this is firsthand experience, right? So when I would go and I would talk about the pains that veterans are going through when they're transitioning out of the military, people were like, they weren't just hearing me, they were feeling me, right? And this is really what it takes. And also on the point of like fund managers, you know, like I understand that, okay, you have a fiduciary duty. This is ultimately like an investment product, but like you have to think about the perspective, right? The way that we think about it is we're not here to try to like this Silicon Valley model of like raise money, deploy it as fast as possible, and then, you know, push your companies to have markups, right? Like even if it's to the disadvantage of the founder or the company, right? So that on paper you have created value, right? And then you go and you raise a second and a third fund based off of unrealized returns, hoping that the law of averages kicks in, you know what I mean? And you get a Kareem in your portfolio. Like this isn't going to work here because there aren't enough, the ecosystem isn't mature enough for there to be enough liquidity opportunities for that. You know what I mean? Stop trying to financially engineer, right? Just, it's very, very simple. If you create value, financial returns have to come. Never, ever in the history of the world did a company not create value that had its financial return be equivalent to the value it was created. It's a binary relationship. You know what I mean? So stop financially engineering, right? And value engineer. Focus on creating value. Focus on supporting entrepreneurs the right way. Focus on solving actual problems. And that problem shouldn't be, this delivery company got me my Big Mac meal off of McDonald's like 2 minutes faster than the other one. That is not a problem to solve. You know what I mean? Like, please stop.
Yeah, I think the age of Q-commerce is gone anyway.
Yeah, it's comical, you know. So
yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So how do you get money to fund all of this? Like, who's funding Modus? Is it institutions? Is it government? Is it angels?
It's a combination. So we have Hub 71 is a partner and investor for our UAE venture builder that's out of Hub 71.
Okay.
We have USAID that's anchored us in Egypt. We're talking to several organizations in Saudi about anchoring us there. And then, investors from the US, high net worth and family offices and institutions from here. It's a traditional GP LP structure, right?
Okay.
But what we're doing is think about all of the things that we do for these founders. This is significantly de-risking for our LPs, right? Like you're not letting, if you compare a traditional fund that would just give somebody a check, right? Versus venture building, we're helping them avoid first timer mistakes. What's the opposite of that? Founders are learning at the expense of the investor, right?
Yeah.
And what we see this all the time. We see companies that, again, that have been out in the market for 2 or 3 years and they come to us and we're just like, this could have been built and you could have achieved this status in 12, 16 months, for example, you know? So it significantly de-risks for investors. It creates the companies, it makes them have a much stronger foundation, right? Again, they're a well-oiled machine. They have that discipline. They have this framework. And they just have, in an inherently risky, investment product, which is VC, the riskiest of all, what we provide is we provide the best opportunity for success. It's never guaranteed, you can still build it and fail, right? And it happens and it will happen, but if you can reduce the failure percentage, right? The law of averages, you invest in 10 companies, 7 fail, 2 do okay, and 1 is your home run that's supposed to cover your losses, right? Like this is gambling as far as I'm concerned, the law of power dynamics. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna make semi-educated bets gonna make bets and see how it ends up. But if you can reduce the failure from 7 to 5, right? What are those $250, $100, $250 million exits? What are they going to do for your IRR and for your fund? It's going to shoot them through the roof.
Yeah, but I think it's a matter of scale as well, right? So, I mean, when you are a VC fund, you have $100 million, you're probably able to invest in, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 companies, depending on your check size, but you're able to deploy this money fairly quickly, right? And you're able to work with a higher number of companies.
Correct, but
whereas the venture builder, like you can do 5, 6, 7, 10 maybe companies per year, right? And then so there's that scale as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are limited. We do not play the quantity game. We play the quality game. Right? And this is on the spectrum. Like we're just like a couple notches more on less quantity but higher quality. And this is our model. This is what we think is a better model.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced while fundraising or that you see in general here in the market, vis-a-vis, for example, when you were working in the US?
For venture builders or in general?
In general, in the ecosystem.
So one, on the venture building side, man, we were talking about venture building for a long time. People had no idea what it was. So it was a long education process, and you have to educate, indoctrinate to get people to really understand it. Now people are a lot more familiar with it because it was like the new hot topic. But generally speaking, a lot of very hard lessons learned. We've made some, mistakes and we've learned the hard way because we're a startup platform ourselves. Like we're very, very early. For example, making commitments based on investor commitments. We've made commitments to portfolio companies based on investor commitments that have been made to us, and investors don't respond, they ghost, they change their mind last minute, What is it with the ghosting, by the way? Is this like a region? I mean, you've worked in the US, right? You've built a company, a big company there. You've raised $200 million. I mean, so what is it with the ghosting thing? I think it's a cultural thing. In the US, you shake hands on a deal and it's done, right? Here, I say,
I mean, you often hear, right, even stories in Silicon Valley where an entrepreneur is with an investor at a bar and on a napkin, they kind of like have an agreement and that's it. I don't know if that's myth or true, but.
We have US investors at Modus and I've had them wire over $2 million, no paper, It's totally different. Here, I think it's a cultural thing where there's like this taboo of saying no. Or for I'm not sure what reason, they delivering bad news is something that people are more like non-confrontational.
So it's, yeah, you think that it's like
I think
the
it's a
lack
part
of,
of it.
or okay.
I think it's like non-confrontation. I think ego plays into it as well. You know, sometimes some people have egos and are like, oh, this person is not worth me even, you know, communicating to, you know, which is just the simplest thing to do, you know, as a common courtesy. So I'm not really sure, you know, I'm not really sure what it is.
Because it happens, like it happened to me when I was an entrepreneur. I've had people pull off at like the last minute. It's happening to me now as a syndicate lead, right? I have investors who commit and that pull out on the last minute without any material like change, right? I mean, even on, even not only on fundraising, even when you talk to people in general, like people come to you and they have all of these ideas for collaboration and talking and all of that, and then they disappear. What is it? I'm trying to figure it out.
Maybe they just like to hear themselves talk, or they want to feel important, or I mean, some I'm sure some people it's genuinely like they get busy. I do it all the time. I drop the ball.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the simplest thing is just to, first of all, let's just be clear. It's totally an investor's right on whether they want to invest or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they want to change their mind, like I understand, right? Like people change their minds. People have circumstances that change, you know, changes in their circumstances. So it is ultimately up to them. But the simplest thing you can do is just as a common courtesy is just to communicate. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, it doesn't take much effort, and it helps keep relationships strong and viable, you know? So you were talking about your syndicate, you know, would you be more apt to go back to people who have pulled out?
No.
You know, so, okay, should I bring them deals, right? Or not, you know? Maybe it's the perception that cash is king, right? And because I'm the person with the money, you know, I'm the one who should be chased, you know? But let me tell you, I mean, even though we're in a down cycle right now and there's a cash crunch, like there's an abundance of cash generally, right? Versus startups and deal flow, which is one of the reasons why venture building is picking up so much, because you've got VCs fighting to get into the same deals because they got to deploy their money, you know, and founders are taking money and having valuations that are purely based on what they're raising, right? There's unsubstantiated valuations.
Yeah, well, that's not happening, I think, anymore this year. But
not this year, but it was a pretty big problem, you know, early last year and the year before, you know. But still, there needs to be more deal flow. Like, you have to think about the ecosystem and like the amount of capital that's available. That's something that is just, it can be the push of a button, okay? You know, a sovereign can say, dump $5 billion into the ecosystem, and there's going to be $5 billion in the ecosystem. Now, how long does it take to have well-educated, experienced founders to be able to take that money for good investments? That takes years of development, right? So the cash is exponentially increasing, and the human capital development is significantly slower, right? So people should be really focusing more on that, right? On the human capital development, not the financial capital.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen. I mean, that happens, unfortunately, the hard way, through experience, through building these companies. I don't think if you put people through, because you see there's a lot of initiatives out there, right? Like coding and different types of initiatives, or accelerators or incubators. But sometimes you just need to, it's a cycle that people have to go through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think there's a more efficient way to do it. You know what I mean? If you're going to make a decision between bringing in an incubator, an accelerator, or a venture builder, you know, the venture builder is going to have a lot more substance in educating, you know, incorporating curriculums into schools, you know, having, you know, like a General Assembly out of New York type academy here, you know, this could be a startup in itself, you know,
So going back to the challenges in the ecosystem, so you said basically people going back on their commitments. This is something that you faced. What else?
For some reason, I feel like there is people are more. It's really weird for people to be happy when others fail. This is something that I've seen in this region, and I can't get my head around it. You know, I really can't get my head around it. You know, I don't know if you read Brad Feld's book about developing entrepreneurial ecosystem in Denver, and what they do is they have like parties when somebody's startup fails, because they're celebrating all of the things that they've learned, right, for their next venture. You know, this is the type of ecosystem you need. But like here, I feel like people love to just see other people like hurt. I don't know why. It's weird, you know. It's like if somebody's not doing very well, it's like talk and gossip and it's like, you know, you should be. The ecosystem is very small, and if you want it to develop the right way, people need to be supported. And there's enough room for everybody.
Yes.
You know, like, you know,
there is.
It's
not a zero-sum game, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game,
Yeah.
you know, and the sum is greater than all the individual parts, you
Yes.
know. And you see like clubs, you know, there's like an old guard of investors, and now there's like a new guard of investors coming in, and you know, we're trying to build what we call like VC 2.0 in the region, you know, which is like people who are more like-minded, and we want to attract the right types of co-investors for our companies, et cetera. So this is something that I really don't understand, but I see it quite a bit. You know, why so competitive, right? Why even within a single country are different organizations, you know, battling it out? You know, it's I think we're all on the same team here, you know, and the collective sum will have a much bigger, faster, positive impact.
That's a cultural thing as well.
I think so. You know, maybe it's you know, deep rooted in the tribal history of the Middle East region.
I think so. I mean, personally, I think so. I think we have differences within the same countries, and we definitely have differences with people in different countries. So
yeah.
so I think it's ingrained in us.
Yeah, gets a little political, but
okay. Yeah. Well, this is something that hopefully collectively we'll be able to work on.
Yeah, just got to change perspective. That's all. You know, got to keep fighting the good fight.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Kareem. That was really lovely. Thanks a lot for sharing your story, and looking forward to see what Modus is going to be doing over the next few years.
Great. Thank you for having me, and a pleasure. And yeah, I'm trying to do some good things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations with Lulu with Kareem Elsirafy. If you want to know more about Modus Capital, visit modus, modus.vc. There's also a blog post titled Find Your Larry that I highly urge you to read. It's super inspiring. Don't forget to check out the show's website, conversationswithlulu.com, to look at all the other episodes, or to reach out to me for guest feedback, for guest recommendations, feedback, and sponsorship requests. You can also follow me on all social media platforms at Lulu Khazan. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch your podcast to get the latest episodes. And please, if you could spend 7 minutes of your time on filling up the podcast listener survey, you can find the link in the show's description. It would really help me in getting to know you, our audience, a little bit more. And also it will help me continue to deliver content that is value adding. Thank you very much, and see you in a few weeks.